Hello everyone, my name is Josh and this one's called Interesting Musings. And today I'm going to do a different sort of video to what I usually do. Usually I do a review or I do a reading or I do anything like that. Today I'm going to be doing a top 10 list and I'm going to do a top 10 list on scenes from films or TV shows that make me cry. And the reason why I wanted to do this was because I was feeling very a little bit emotional throughout most of yesterday and so forth. And that happens from time to time because of my situation being changed and various things to do with my family. So I do feel like I have little moments of just tearing up. So in order to make it slightly more therapeutic, I thought I'd make a video where I'm actually talking about something that actually does make me cry or actually does get me a bit emotional. So this is my top 10 list of moments from TV shows or films that make me cry. And the first entry, number 10, is from a film called The Elephant Man. And this film stars John Hurt, Sir John Gielgud, Anthony Hopkins, and it was directed by David Lynch, who's one of my favourite filmmakers. And you wouldn't think so, judging by what David Lynch is usually known for, but I love David Lynch. He could literally do a film about anything and I'd happily sit down in a cinema seat and watch it. Like, he's one of those filmmakers. He's like David Cronenberg or Steven Spielberg or Tim Burton. I'll literally watch anything he puts out. Like, he's one of those filmmakers for me. And he directed this sort of in between his feature film Eraserhead and Dune. And this film stars a man by the name of Joseph Merrick, who is, when he is basically spotted at a local carnival show as a sideshow attraction, he's taken in by a doctor who tries to basically make him live in his attic space of the local London hospital, and he tries to basically get him out into regular society. He's trying to also raise awareness for people of his condition who have things like elephantitis and things like that, but he also wants to make him a really good friend and make him reintegrate him into society and into culture and make sure that he's loved and appreciated. And it is a very powerful film. It's a film that definitely will make a lot of people cry. One moment that really makes me cry in this film is for context, Joseph Merrick, or John Merrick as he's been told to be called, but I'm going to call him by his actual name, the name that he was born with, Joseph Merrick, because I don't know why they changed his name to John. I have no idea why, so I'm going to call him Joseph Merrick. There's a scene where he is at the train station and he's walking along. He has basically a coat on, he has a walking stick, and he has a bag over his head. And he basically is walking around in the train station. He's minding his own business, so that he gets the attention of these children who start, following him, start pointing at him and muttering to themselves and, laughing a little bit, like giggling a little bit. And then when one of them tries to bother him and he's trying to say, "Leave me alone," he accidentally knocks one of the children over, and this catches the attention of most of the parents, the adults in the train station, and they all start, running after him, and they corner him in a loo, in a public toilet, and they grab hold of him and they pull off his bag, and they see that they see his face, and he immediately starts to they immediately start harassing him. People scream, some people shouting and screaming and calling him a monster and things like that, and they all crowd round him, and he just shouts, "Leave me be, I'm not an animal, I'm a human being." And it was just the way John Hurt performed it that just really made me weep in that moment, because this is him basically saying, "I've had enough of being treated like a monster. I've had enough of being treated like, an outsider, a freak, and I'm going to tell you that I'm a human being. I'm a human being, and I am not an animal. I'm not an animal." And it got me to cry because it just literally feels like he's probably had to live with that a lot of his life. He's had to live with people looking at him in that way. But then I later found out that when he was born, he was pretty much like you and me, essentially. But because of his condition, when he gets to his 20s, he starts to grow these tumours all around his face. And it's really horrible to think about and to imagine that, he pretty much, he had this condition that still can't be cured, but at the same time, he kind of, lived with it, and he just kind of, lived his life, and he has had to live with people calling him all sorts of things, people treating him like a freak, but he just basically has been trying to live his life the best he can without having to, incur any kind of, trouble or whatever. But he always ends up doing so because humanity is always, one step behind the rest of the world or whatever. And he's had to basically live with this and kind of, had to deal with the, people calling him a monster and a freak. And I do think that's one of the more important aspects of this particular film, is he's actually trying to show that he is more than what his outside appearance is leading people to believe. And in real life, he did actually entertain a lot of interesting people upstairs in that attic room of the London hospital. And it's actually really fascinating, like, how many people he entertained, how many people came over. I think it was Princess Anne who came and visited him at one point. I'm not sure if it was Princess Anne, but yeah, I think it was... No, not Princess Anne, because this was before... Sorry, scratch that. Forget I said that. But yeah, one of Queen Victoria's children visited him. I think it was one of her daughters or something. I think she visited him, and I thought that's incredible that he literally, got all these different people to come visit him. So many people wanted to get to know him and get to, know what his life is like upstairs in that room, and what he gets up to and what he's interested in and things like that. And they really kind of do embrace that in the film. They really do kind of show all the fascinating things that he did, and it's just such a fantastic performance. But it's really heightened by David Lynch's direction, who really does kind of add his own brand of special visual filmmaking, surreal filmmaking into this film. But I think what's very interesting is he was able to make this film in black and white, and it kind of adds a certain level of it being timeless, that it kind of feels almost like it's a bit of history coming to life with the black and white tinged film. I feel that really kind of adds a certain level of you going back in time, or you're watching one of those old sepia tone photographs come to life. It has that kind of very wonderful dreamlike feel to it, and I think that absolutely makes the film work. So that's my number 10, and moving on very quickly because we're already at 7 minutes. Moving on very quickly, my second moment, my number 9 moment is from Dumbo. And you know what scene it's going to be after Dumbo is been mocked and ridiculed for his big ears. His mother gets basically reprimanded and taken into a wagon of sorts, and she's chained at the ankle. And what really makes this scene upsetting for me, what really makes it cry, is it makes me think of my mum and how much I miss her a lot. And I really do kind of think when I watch that scene now, I always get a little bit weepy, or I always find it difficult to control my tears, kind of thing. I haven't seen it in a while, but there's a reason for that. But yeah, I find this scene really sad, and I think that when the song "Baby of Mine" comes on, it really does pack a punch. And I think it packs a punch with anybody who is very close to a parent or whatever. I think it really does add that level of sadness. It's kind of like the Bambi's mum dying moment. It's kind of one of those moments where you really do feel like you're in the shoes of that character at that moment. But except in this case, it's a little bit more happier for Dumbo, because he actually at least gets to see his mum every once in a while, whereas Bambi couldn't. And I think that's one of the moments that I really do think really kind of makes me cry. It's a wonderful film. It still is a wonderful film all these years later. I think every emotional punch is well earned, is well established. And that's my number 9. Number 8 is from Game of Thrones. And this one, I'm sure a lot of people will know because they've either seen Game of Thrones or they probably know it because it's been featured on top 10 lists or there's been reaction shots to this scene. I'm going to choose and it's a spoiler, by the way. If you haven't seen Game of Thrones, please click away now. But I'm definitely going to choose the scene with Shiva, where she gets sacrificed to the Lord of the Light. And this was a horrible scene to watch because it's basically you're watching a child scream and beg for her life. And the actress who did it did such a good job of really conveying how she's kind of in this very powerless situation. But I literally had this moment where I had to literally, stifle my sobs a little bit because I was literally on the verge of tears. Like it's such a powerful moment. Rewatching it has kind of given me that reaction, and at the time I kind of had this very sad look at my face, and I was trying to stifle sobs, but this scene is absolutely really, horrific to watch. And it's horrific seeing the mum try to want to save her daughter who's about to be burned alive. And Sir Davos, the Onion Knight, who's probably one of my favourite characters in Game of Thrones, he literally, says to Melisandre afterwards, if your God, if your religion says burning a child is okay, then your God is evil. And I literally found myself rooting for him in that moment. I said, "You tell him, you tell her, Davos, you tell her, mate. Like that's really good." But yeah, I found it particularly heartfelt because I'm an uncle. I have 2 nieces and 2 nephews, and I adore them. So if there was ever a moment where that sort of thing were to happen, or they were in any pain, or if they were in any trouble or anything that I couldn't do or what have you, I just feel very sad because they are I adore my niece and nephews. They're amazing, they're great kids, and I really do think they're just incredible. So from an uncle perspective, it really kind of unlocked the uncle side of me out. Like if I was there and that was my niece or nephews trying to gonna get burned alive to be sacrificed to some god, I'd be like, I don't care if I get killed. I would literally just tear through a lot of the soldiers and make sure that they get down off that pyre and saved and things like that. Like my uncle instincts would kick in, and I've always said to myself, for me as an uncle, that you're meant to be doing the job that the parents can't do when the parents aren't there. So if a child needs help with something, you help them out. Like if they need help homework or they need help to read, like on Christmas Day I was helping my niece to read a book that she got for Christmas, and it was a really nice experience because she did it really well. And in many ways it could have felt like I had my own sort of Davos and Shiva relationship, where she was reading and I was sort of listening to her read. It was such a really nice moment. And yeah, I absolutely think this scene's incredibly powerful. The actors did an incredible job, and all the actors in this show did a wonderful job. So yeah, that's number 8, Game of Thrones. And my 7th moment that makes me cry is the song Bright Eyes from Watership Down. Not so much the scene itself, even though the scene is really beautiful. It's basically after the main rabbit, voiced by John Hurt, has been shot, Hazel, the brother, basically goes on this voyage where he tries to find his brother after he's supposedly been shot. And this entire sequence is beautifully animated. And the song just really adds a new level of emotion to the scene as well. And I think that really, even thinking about it, really kind of makes me get a little choked up a little bit. But I really do think this is an incredible scene, and it's well animated. It's a beautiful song anyway. Even when you listen to the song without the visuals, it's a beautiful song anyway. It's a really wonderful song. It's very emotional, but it's very kind of almost heartfelt in its message, and things like that. And it is really sad. So yeah, I absolutely adore this moment from the film. And the film Watership Down is really good as well. I definitely do think it kind of gets a bit of a bad rap for being the the film that traumatized a whole entire generation of kids. But I think, you know, it was a different time back then. It was the 70s, so they probably thought it was okay to show violence to kids as long as it was within reason. There's nothing really overly inappropriate in the film outside of that. Aside from the gory deaths, it's still, you know, quite, you know, fairly family friendly, I guess. Like, it still manages to have those very, you know, okay moments. But I think that kind of just shows the message that, you know, the environment matters, and, you know, when you engage in stuff like, you know, construction work on the environment, you are literally, you know, creating these environments where rabbits can't get out of their warrens and things like that. So it literally is a cautionary tale to rabbit to you know, children, saying that, you know, you need to look after nature, you need to look after, you know, the environment, otherwise these things will happen to our wildlife and the animals and things like that. So it has a very good message at the heart of it. And of course, the story with the rabbits is also really compelling as well. So I think that's fantastic. I'm going to move on. Number 6, I'm going to give to an episode of Inside Number 9. And I kind of was tossing it back and forth between the 12 Days of Christine or Bertie Clifton's dressing room. And I have talked about Bertie Clifton's dressing room and how emotional that scene is, but I am going to give it to the 12 Days of Christine, because this episode is just fantastic. It basically is set up like you are literally, like where you were literally experiencing a person's life from one day to the next. It all focuses around 12 days. So one day will be focused on New Year's Day, the other day will be focused on Valentine's Day. They're all about holidays, and where there isn't holidays in the calendar, they'll add things like, oh, it's Christine's birthday, or oh, they're going on holiday, or oh, it's, you know, something else, or what have you. So they always will fill in the gaps, but the whole entire point of the story is to make you feel a little bit, you know, dazed, and to make you feel a little bit hazy, like what's going on, where are we, what day of the week is it, what's happened, what's going on, where is this all going? That's the question I always find myself asking with an Inside Number 9. And I think this episode is fantastic. I absolutely think it's an emotional powerhouse. But the moment that makes me cry is the moment that, or gets me a little bit weepy, or, you know, gets a little bit of a lump in my throat, is the scene where Christine is talking to her partner, Adam, who's played by Tom Riley, and he's packing a suitcase. He's trying to get stuff into a suitcase, and he goes, I can't believe this is happening. It was supposed to be just the two of us. Now we've got to, you know, go in all three of us. And, you know, it's just very ridiculous that this has to happen. You should have told your mum to do this. And she just says, well, I'm sorry my dad died. I'm sorry, you know, my mum couldn't look after our child because my dad died. And things like that. And I think it's the way Sheridan Smith performs that line, especially when she says the word died, that really kind of gets me going. It really gets me in the heart kind of thing. Like, Sheridan Smith is a fabulous actress anyway, but the fact that she literally, you know, said that line was such an emotional, with almost like a whimpering, almost like she's about to try to, almost like she's stifling a sob almost. That's such an incredible moment, because it really just shows that she is trying her best to make things work for everyone, but she's also going through a grieving process of her own, having lost a father who had Alzheimer's. And this particular episode is fantastic for its twist, but I do think this moment really was a huge emotional gut punch for me. But the ending scene is also really, you know, an emotional gut punch scene as well. And I'd highly recommend watching this show based on just this episode alone. But I think this entire series is just fantastic in terms of storytelling quality, and I think it's just a really great story. So that's 12 Days of Christine for my number 6 spot. I think I am. I've kind of lost track. Yeah, I think it's number 6. Number 5 is from a show called Grey's Anatomy. Now, I'm a huge fan of Grey's Anatomy. I watched it for quite a long period of time. I watched it up until series 14, and then I was about to start series 15, and I just kind of went off track. I need to get back on watching Grey's Anatomy because I absolutely just love it. And one of the scenes that made me cry was a scene involving a gay a gay couple, one of whom is a patient who's about to undergo brain surgery, and he has a lover who's in the military, and he's in the military as well, and his father's a sergeant. And there's this moment where he is kissing his boyfriend, and Meredith's in the room, and she just sees them making out, and his dad walks in, and he immediately, the son immediately pulls away, and he has this look on his face like he's about to burst into tears. And I felt very sad because he's treating a moment of love and strength as something to be ashamed of, because his father's watching him, and he literally thinks that his father's going to be like this tough as old boots, like, I'm a soldier, I'm a sergeant, and this sort of thing isn't on, and things like that, because of masculinity or whatever. And it's very emotional because, and I'm going to say spoiler, the son dies in surgery, and that really broke my heart. Not only did he go to his grave thinking that what he was doing was something to be ashamed of, but he never got to find out if his father was okay with him being gay. And I always find gay characters in media, especially when it comes to gay characters dying, really heartbreaking, because I'm a gay man, and I really do kind of find myself really attached to gay characters in storytelling and media. Whenever I watch a horror film, I'm always very kind of worried. Part of me is also thinking to myself, yay, gay characters, representation kind of thing. But then I'm also kind of very worried as well, because I'm always thinking to myself at the back of my mind, how long is it going to be before they're going to end up getting their heads cut off or something like that? And I don't want to feel that way whenever I watch a movie, but then it adds a certain level of intensity, it adds a certain level of intrigue as well. So I think that's something that a lot of people, it kind of accelerates the drama, and it makes you want to keep watching, but it always keeps me kind of worried, because I don't like seeing gay characters get killed off in movies and TV shows. But when it's a heartfelt scene like this, it breaks my heart even more, because this poor man went to his grave not knowing if his father was okay with him being gay or not. And he spent one of his last moments on Earth literally feeling ashamed for having, kissed his partner, kissed his lover. And I think that was very sad. And that's a moment I definitely will talk about in more depth. And I'll talk about a lot more other... there's one Inside Number 9 episodes that also talks about the topic of a gay character. And I look forward to giving more insight into that as well. And number 4 is a scene from the film Pan's Labyrinth. This film is a masterpiece. It's one of Guillermo del Toro's masterpieces. And the reason why that is it's got incredible visuals, incredible moments. I would also put one of the monsters in this film as one of the scariest monsters I've ever seen, ever, the Pale Man. I love the Pale Man, he's awesome. But I absolutely love Pan's Labyrinth. It's a beautiful movie. I absolutely love it. I love Guillermo del Toro's work. I think he's a fantastic filmmaker, and I look forward to more stuff he can do. But this film, I'm going to talk about a scene where it's at a very emotional height of the film, where Ophelia feels lost and alone. And it's just after a very traumatic event involving a mother giving birth. And it's gotten so bad that literally the sheets have gotten so stained that she literally has to sleep in another room. So she basically goes into this other room, she gets all her things, and she just sits on the bed. And Mercedes, the housekeeper, says to her, it's going to be all right. Childbirth isn't a very easy thing to do. It's very difficult. There are a lot of complications. And then she said, it's only natural. And then she just says, Ophelia says, and this is a little girl who's saying this, then I'll never have one. I'll never have a baby. And that really made me feel sad, that she literally feels so broken and hurt by this moment because she is still a child, and a lot of people do say that she's too old to be reading fairy tales and things like that, because that's a motif with their characters. She loves fairy tales and she loves stories of folklore and happy endings and princesses and towers and what have you. But she's still a child and she's still learning about the world as it's developing in front of her. And it's just a very sad scene to watch. And there's another scene, which I'm also going to cite, where she is talking to her baby brother, and she's saying, when your time comes and you come out, can you please not hurt my mother? You'll love her when when you see her, she's beautiful and things like that. And seeing that moment just made me go. I just felt like, oh, this is really sad to watch, because you're seeing this girl who is still a child, literally in this situation that she's not in control of. She's had to move away from the city, move away from her home, move away from her life, get involved with a man who is an absolute powerful dictator in the name of Capitan Vidal, and there's all sorts of other things going on, and not to mention she's had to contend with monsters like the Pale Man in her fantasy world. So there's so many things in this film I think are brilliant, but the scenes that really do require an emotional punch, give you an emotional punch, really do earn that moment. And I think Pan's Labyrinth is Guillermo del Toro's masterpiece. I know a lot of people might say The Shape of Water is his masterpiece, or one of their favourite films, and I'm not disputing that. I do think, The Shape of Water is a good film, but it's not quite Pan's Labyrinth levels of awesome, or quite Pan's Labyrinth levels of, awesome for me. So that's my number 4 spot. And number 3 is from the film The Lion King. Now, this is another death of a parent, but I am going to cite the original, The Lion King, because I felt like all these different factors really do play into making this scene work. It's basically the stampede level and the stampede scene from the movie, and it basically starts off with Simba learning his roar, and he ends up, creating an echo, which creates a little bit of a quake that ends up creating a whole entire army of wildebeests descend from the mountains and, just ride out into this canyon-like wasteland that ends up, getting bigger and bigger and bigger and more hectic. And this requires, Mufasa to go and save him. And he tries to basically, grab hold of him, keep him safe in the jaws of his teeth and things like that. And he tries to protect him, but he can't. I mean, he literally has this moment where he literally puts him on a ledge and then he just gets carried away by wildebeests. And it's really emotional. Your heart's racing the entire time. I mean, honestly, you literally do feel like Simba in that moment when he's looking down into the stampede of wildebeests, and his eyes are literally just flicking back and forth, looking for where his father is, looking for where he could be, and then it escalates to a crescendo where Mufasa is climbing this little cliff's edge side, and he's literally clinging on by his claws. His claws are literally out. He's sliding down the crevice, and he just says, "Scar, brother, help me." And then Scar just does that thing where he beds his claws into his paws and then just basically says, "Long live the king." And it's emotional, it's shocking, it makes you go, "Oh, Scar, you bastard." But then it also kind of is an interesting twist, because usually in scenes like that, the hero wins, but in this case, the villain wins. The villain's the victor, and it's very sad. And it's the moment where I think Simba is trying to get his dad to get up that really kind of gets me. The fact that he's literally saying, "Dad, get up! Come on, we got to go home." That's when I really kind of get a little bit weepy. And even when I watch it today, I still have this little moment where I'm like, "Oh," where I lose my voice. Oh no. But I friggin' love the original Lion King. I used to watch it a lot as a child. it wasn't my favourite Disney film growing up. I do think, films like Alice in Wonderland and Dumbo and things like that were definitely my favourites. I remember I used to watch a lot of Disney films, especially ones to do with animals. I used to enjoy watching as well, like 101 Dalmatians, Lady and the Tramp, and things like that. Like, I always used to love watching animals, especially puppies. Like, whenever I see that scene at the beginning of Lady and the Tramp where Darling's opening the box and you see the box prop up, like bulge upwards as the puppy's head is literally bonking it to be let out. I always find that scene very adorable. You hear that little tiny whimpering; it's so adorable. But yeah, I love stuff to do with animals, and these films were a huge watch in my house when I was a kid as well. And yeah, that's my number 3 spot. And moving swiftly on, my number 2 will be, I'm going to include this particular scene because I do think it's a good scene. I'm going to include the execution scene from The Green Mile. And for those of you who don't know, The Green Mile is a psychological drama film written and directed by Frank Darabont, and it's based on the novel by Stephen King. And the story follows a prison guard who is revisiting a period in his life where he was a warden on death row, and he invites he basically is seeing a prisoner into the prison who is a giant black man by the name of John Coffey, and he's played by Michael Clarke Duncan. And this guy is huge. Like, he's absolutely massive. He's so big that he literally, towers over all the guards. Like, he's that big of a guy. And he's muscular. Like, he's really kind of, like this really intimidating guy. He could try out for the WWE. He's so big. But he's actually the sweetest guy in the world. He's very sweet. He says things like, "Don't leave me in the dark. I'm afraid of the dark," and things like that. And he's such a sweetheart of a character. But then they read his case file and he says, what was he in for? And then you hear the story about the girls and how he was found with the girls in his arms and how he was basically, arrested right there on the spot. And people literally thought very low of him after that. Like, they thought, how can this sweet guy be, do what he did? And this film is an emotional roller coaster. And spoiler alert, by the way, for those of you who haven't seen The Green Mile, and if you haven't seen The Green Mile, what are you doing? It's on Netflix right now. Go watch it. It's a fantastic film. Hopefully it is. As of this writing, I hope it is. But this film is fantastic, and the big twist of the film. Well, actually, there's 2 big twists. There's one that hints at, first of all, the people who haven't seen The Green Mile, please leave this video right now and go and watch it. But there's one big twist, which is that John can perform miracles. He can literally touch someone and he can take away all their negative energy, all their sickness, and he can basically, vomit it out as a series of ash cloud locust things. And he's used his power a lot, but he has a limit where they have to be either sick or on the verge of death, but still conscious enough for something to be done about it. Like, say, for example, in one scene, there's this woman who is the warden's wife, who is played by Patricia Clarkson, I think her name is. She was in a film called 6 Feet Under, and I absolutely think she's a fabulous actress. She plays the warden's wife, and she has a brain tumour. And it's gotten so bad that she literally is not sleeping at night. She'll swear randomly at certain points, and they take John Coffey to go and see her because they know he can perform these miracles. And he touches her on the head, and he basically, cures her of her brain tumour. And when she meets him, when she sees him fully, she goes, "I dreamed of you. And it was dark, and we found each other in the dark." And there's such a beautiful meeting of of two people who clearly, you know, are from completely different backgrounds, but there's that sense of connectivity and unionship in that one scene. It's just, oh, it's fabulous. I love this film so much. But the scene that makes me cry is the scene where he gets executed, because you know, and I'm going to say spoilers for this particular film because I do think I need to say it in order to really hit home why this makes me cry, is it turns out that John Coffey didn't kill those girls. He didn't kill them. It was someone else who actually ends up being an inmate in the prison. And I really hate this character so much. He literally makes my skin crawl. He's played by Sam Rockwell. I think his name's Billy. He literally is a character that really makes my skin crawl. Whenever I see him on screen in this film, I just really think to myself, he is just an absolute pig of a person, and I hate him. So when it's revealed that he was the one who did it, and he played a role of trust, where this family took him into their home and made him feel like one of the family, that really made me feel sick. That he literally was... He took advantage of this family's trust, and he basically repaid them by raping and killing their daughters. And that really made me feel sick. That really made me feel sick that they trusted this man, and he just completely and utterly, you know, disregarded their trust and just, you know, did this horrible thing to these girls, to these little girls. And it's really... Oh, it makes my skin crawl. But I think Sam Rockwell's a great actor, but this is one of the characters where I feel like whenever I see him play it, I always immediately get the very uncomfortable chills. And that's something that isn't very easy to do when you're an actor or a performer or even a writer. So I feel like that's something that Sam Rockwell did very well in his performance, really making you cringe whenever you see him on screen. It just really kind of gives you that sense. And knowing what he did afterwards on repeat viewings, it really adds a certain level of, oh, keep this guy well away from me kind of thing. Like, even if you know, you're just a random guy, and you kind of look at him and you feel violated, kind of like, yeah, he's one of those characters. But John Coffey gets executed, and he basically says he's been given his sentence, and he's been let off, and they're about to begin the procedure, and they put the... Before they put them on old Sparky, they put this black cloth over their eyes. And John Coffey just says, "I'm afraid of the dark, boss. Don't put me in the dark, please. I'm scared of the dark." And Paul, played by Tom Hanks, just goes, "All right, John." And he's saying the rights. And as the current is being shut through, and you're seeing... You're not necessarily seeing him get electrocuted. You're watching Tom Hanks's reaction to it, and you can see the tears on his face, you can see the regret, but there's this very beautiful shot of the bulb going out and the sparks just going everywhere. There's just a very beautiful slow motion shot of that moment behind him as the room darkens, and you just see Tom Hanks's visage and you see the tears on his face. It's just such a powerful moment. And it really makes you cry. It really does make you cry, because you think this guy was the sweetest person in the world, and he had this horrible thing happen to him because he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he wanted to help. He wanted to save those girls, but by the time he found them, they were already dead, so he couldn't save them. He couldn't perform his miracles on them. And it's a beautiful story, but like films like To Kill a Mockingbird, you really do feel the injustice of what's happened to this poor man, and you really do kind of feel like this world's too good for people like John Coffey. Like, you really do get that feeling afterwards. Like, yeah, these people are so awful. And this film is set in the 1930s, where racial tensions were at their high, and part of me couldn't help but wonder that it was because of the colour of his skin that he was also arrested and thrown on death row. I think him just committing the crime was just purely circumstantial, and I think racism might have also played a role in him getting put on death row or getting arrested for murder and things like that. So that's just something that I found through rewatching it multiple times. But yeah, it's a good film. It's a sad moment, but it's a really, you know, good film that really stays with you after you've watched it. And what's number one? I don't really know. I'm just kind of doing this list off the fly. I will definitely say there are some sad moments that really have gotten to me a couple of times. I will definitely say that a film called The Tramp is a sad film because it's about a boxer and his relationship with his son, and the scene where he's in the room at the end and the champ's dead and his son is literally, you know, trying to get his dad to wake up. That scene's, you know, really affecting. And I feel like there's so many other great sad moments in films, but I will definitely I'm going to cheat a little bit because I am going to say a scene. Well, actually, I'm not going to say a scene that's from a film or TV show. Well, actually, I am going to say that a scene from a TV show is probably my most, you know, tearjerker type moment, and I definitely will say it's from a show called 6 Feet Under, and it's during a scene where Nate, one of the main characters, is suffering with a brain tumor or some kind of neurological condition where he literally can't remember things. It's literally pressing on his brain so hard that he literally can't get his words out, or whenever he does get his words out, it's always kind of like rolling off his tongue repeatedly, like a glitch almost. And there's this moment where he's with Claire, his sister, his younger sister, and he's ordering food. They've had a nice day. They've, you know, had this great job where they've got to pick up a body for the from the morgue, and they take it over to a funeral to do this sort of funeral service. And they're on their way back, and he goes, "Oh, I'd like a couple of pan-fried beef burgers, pan-fried beef burgers, pan-fried beef burgers," and he keeps repeating that line. And Claire is laughing, first of all, like, isn't this you know, weird, isn't this funny, like what's with this guy, kind of thing. And then it really starts to get very intense. It starts to get very, you know, strange, and then he just sort of collapses out into the middle of the road and he vomits. And that moment really makes me cry because you really show the vulnerability of Nate in that moment. And this is a character who in the series, through my rewatch of it, he's become a character that I'm not really a huge fan of, but at the same time I always kind of get upset at this moment because it really shows that he's vulnerable. And whenever the actor cries as Nate, you really do feel that weight of emotion. And I think this particular moment really does make me cry. There's so many other great moments in the show 6 Feet Under that really do make me cry, but I do think this is one of them. I would definitely recommend this show to anyone who loves a good cry, but then also loves a good laugh as well, like a good dark comedy. I would definitely recommend it for that reason as well. But yeah, this has been my list of top 10 scenes from films and TV shows that make me cry, and I hope you're doing all very well, and I hope you're having a very good day. Take care, bye-bye for now.